My brother told my grandmother's estate lawyer that I had forged her signature to cut him out of the inheritance. My parents stood beside him and nodded. They didn't know I had already requested the bank's surveillance log, the notary's time-stamped records, and a copy of every wire transfer my brother had made in the 14 months before she died. One USB drive at the kitchen table didn't just clear my name. It ended the version of this family they had spent 30 years pretending was real. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without knowing what the last 2 years of my life looked like. My grandmother, we called her Gram, passed away in October. She was 81, sharp until the very end. The kind of woman who did the crossword in pen and argued with cable news anchors like they could hear her. She raised me in a lot of ways that my parents didn't. When my mom and dad went through their rough patch, the years of closed doors and lowered voices that I now understand was my father's gambling problem, cycling through another bad streak. I spent most of my after-schools and summers at Graham's house in Dayton. She taught me to cook. She taught me to balance a checkbook. She used to say, "Baby, the only person who will always show up for you is you, so make sure you're worth showing up for." I took that seriously. I went to Ohio State on a partial academic scholarship and worked the rest. I got my CPA license at 26. I have been a tax attorney for 3 years now, the kind of job where people assume you're either boring or ruthless, and I am fine with being both, depending on the day. My brother is 4 years older than me. He is the kind of person who has always been better at seeming successful than being successful. He played college ball for 2 years before a knee injury ended it, and my parents never fully processed that his peak was over. They froze him at 20 years old, still in the jersey, still the one with potential. Everything after that, the failed car detailing business, the 2-year gap on his resume, the apartment my parents quietly co-signed, got smoothed over with. He's still figuring it out, and you know how hard it's been for him. I figured it out without a co-signer. Nobody mentioned how hard it was for me. When Gram got her diagnosis, congestive heart failure, managed but serious, she called me first. Not my parents. Not my brother. Me. We sat at her kitchen table with mugs of instant coffee she insisted tasted better than anything from a machine, and she told me she wanted to get her affairs in order. She had a house, a modest investment account she had built over 40 years of careful saving, and a self-storage unit full of furniture she kept meaning to sell. "I want to leave things fairly," she said, "but I also want to leave things honestly. There's a difference." I understood what she meant. My brother had borrowed money from her 3 times in the past decade. The total was somewhere around $22,000. She had never asked for it back out loud, but she had written it down. She was meticulous like that. She had a spiral notebook in her kitchen drawer where she tracked every loan, every repayment, or lack thereof, and every conversation she'd had about it. I knew because she showed me, one afternoon, about 6 months before she passed. "I'm not punishing him," she said, turning the notebook's pages slowly. "I'm just being accurate." Her final will, which she updated with her lawyer, a woman named Miss Aldridge, who had handled Graham's paperwork for 15 years, reflected that accuracy. The estate was split, but not evenly. After accounting for the outstanding loans, my brother was set to receive a smaller percentage. The house was to be sold, and the proceeds divided. It was clearly documented, legally executed, witnessed, and notarized. Graham had been assessed as cognitively competent by her physician 2 weeks before signing. There was nothing ambiguous about it. She passed on a Tuesday morning in October. I was with her. My parents came an hour later. My brother drove up from Columbus the following afternoon and spent most of the wake talking to people he hadn't seen since Christmas and acting as though his grief was the largest in the room. The will was read 3 weeks after the funeral. My brother did not take it well. I was in Miss Aldridge's conference room along with my parents and my brother and his girlfriend, who had no legal standing to be there but came anyway and sat in the corner with her arms crossed. When Miss Aldridge finished reading, the room was quiet for about 4 seconds. Then my brother's voice came out flat and cold. "This isn't right." Miss Aldridge, who had clearly navigated this particular moment many times, was calm. "I understand this can be difficult to process." "No," he said, "I mean this literally is not right. Graham would not have done this. She told me we were going to be taken care of equally. He looked across the table at me. "What did you do?" I said nothing. "She was elderly and sick," he continued, his voice rising. "And you are a lawyer. You had access to her. You visited her all the time. You could have talked her into anything." "She was assessed as fully competent," I said. "By who? You probably arranged that too?" My mother put her hand on his arm. "Honey?" "Mom, think about it," he said, turning to her. "Jenna is a tax attorney. She knows how wills work. She knows how to manipulate documents. She had more time alone with Graham than anyone, and now, mysteriously, the will has changed and Jenna comes out better." He looked back at me. "How much did you shift? You think I won't find out?" I looked at him steadily. "You should be very careful about what you're accusing me of." He stood up. "I'm not accusing you of anything yet. I'm just asking questions." That last part was said quietly in the tone people use when they want to plant a seed and watch it grow. He looked at my parents. They looked at their hands. I drove home in silence, and I stayed that way for most of the evening. I had been prepared for him to be upset. I had expected anger. What I had not expected, and what I should have because I know who he is, was that he would go to my parents first. He called them that same night. I know, because my mother called me at 9:30, crying, saying she didn't know what to believe, that my brother was talking about hiring his own attorney, that he thought maybe I had used undue influence, that maybe Graham hadn't been in the right state of mind. "Mom," I said carefully, "she was assessed by her own doctor. It's in the file." "But your brother said..." "What did he say exactly?" A pause. "He said you arranged for the assessment, that you called the doctor's office and scheduled it yourself." "I did. Graham had asked me to, because she was nervous about the phone and didn't want to explain everything from scratch to a receptionist, but she was present for the appointment. She drove herself there. The doctor's notes would reflect that." "I scheduled the appointment because she asked me to," I said. "That is not undue influence. That is helping my grandmother make a phone call." "I know, honey, but..." "Do you believe I forged her will?" Another pause, longer. "The kind that tells you everything." "I don't know what I believe," she said finally. "I just think maybe we should get another opinion." I set the phone down on my nightstand after we said goodbye, and I stared at the ceiling for a long time. There it was, the pause. 28 years of being the reliable one, the one who showed up, the one who drove Graham to appointments and organized the paperwork and paid her own way and asked for nothing. And all it took was one phone call from my brother to plant a seed of doubt that was apparently ready to grow. The soil had been there all along. They had always seen me as the competent one, which in our family meant the one who didn't need protecting, which meant the one who could take it when they needed someone to blame. I got out of bed and went to my kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I am a tax attorney. My entire career is built on paper trails, on the idea that the truth lives in documentation if you know where to look. My brother thought he was accusing a sister. He was actually challenging a professional. I pulled up the notary records database through the Ohio Secretary of State's office, public access. Miss Aldridge's notary commission was valid and in good standing. The will's notarization date was logged correctly. I then looked up my brother's own filing history through the county court system. What I found took me about 40 minutes and a cup of coffee to piece together. 18 months ago, he had filed a small claims action against a former business partner, a landscaping venture that had apparently collapsed. He lost. 6 months ago, his name appeared as a defendant in an eviction proceeding at his old address. The case was dismissed, but not before a judgment had been entered and then vacated after a payment arrangement. And 3 months before Graham died, there was a UCC financing statement filed against him by a company called Meridian Advance Group, a merchant cash advance lender, the kind that targets small businesses and charges annualized rates that would make a credit card company blush. The amount financed was $18,000. I leaned back in my chair. He was underwater. He had been underwater for at least a year, probably longer, and he needed that inheritance money the way a man drowning needs something solid to grab. The uneven split didn't just sting his pride, it closed off an exit. And so he decided to make an exit out of me. I spent the next morning pulling together a folder, the UCC filing, the eviction record, the small claims history, Graham's physician's assessment notes, which Ms. Aldridge had on file and sent me copies of when I called to explain the situation, the notary's public credentials, and, because I had thought to ask Graham about it once, when she mentioned she felt nervous about people going through her things, the login information for the security camera she had installed at the front of her house 2 years ago after a porch piracy incident. The camera had a cloud storage subscription. It retained 90 days of footage. I scrolled through the timestamps. In the 4 weeks before Graham passed, my brother had visited once. A Sunday afternoon in September, 3 hours, and he had left before dinner. In the same 4 weeks, I had been there 11 times. Some visits were short, dropping off groceries, picking up a prescription. Some were long. But 11 visits, time-stamped, visible from a camera that neither of us had ever thought about after she got it installed. If I had been there to manipulate her, I had done it very inefficiently. I also pulled up my own phone records from the period surrounding the will signing. I have a copy because I had requested them earlier in the year for a different reason, and confirmed that on the day Graham signed the updated will, I was in a client meeting in Cincinnati that ran from 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. I had the billing records to prove it. I was not in Dayton. I was not at Miss Aldridge's office. I was not anywhere near my grandmother that day. The will had been signed without me present, exactly the way it should have been. I organized everything into a folder, printed copies, put them in a clean manila envelope. Then I texted my mother. I think we should all talk in person. Can we do Sunday dinner? I'd like to clear some things up before anyone calls any lawyers. She responded within 10 minutes. Of course. Come at 5, I'll make something. I knew what that meant. Pot roast. It was always pot roast when things were serious in our house. She'd been making it since I was 8 years old. The smell of it meant someone was either in trouble or about to get news they didn't want. I spent Saturday the way I always spend the days before something important, quietly. I went for a run. I cleaned my apartment. I called a friend and did not tell her what was happening because I didn't want to talk it out. I had already thought it through, and talking would just make me perform the emotions instead of sit with them. What I felt, underneath the cold professional focus I had been running on since Wednesday, was grief. Not just for Graham. For the version of this family I had tried to believe in for 28 years. The one where the competent daughter and the struggling son and the tired parents eventually sorted it out and loved each other properly. That version had required so much maintenance from me. I was tired. Sunday came. I put on a blazer over dark jeans, the kind of outfit that says, I am calm, but I am not here to be dismissed. I put the manila envelope in my bag. I drove 40 minutes to my parents' house with the radio off. Both cars were in the driveway. My brother's truck was there too, parked at an angle that blocked half the front walkway the way he always did, like the rules of space didn't apply to him. I didn't knock. I used my key, the one I'd had since college and never given back because no one had ever asked me to. The house smelled exactly like I knew it would. They were in the dining room, my father at the head of the table, my mother on his left, my brother across from the empty seat that was clearly meant for me. His girlfriend was not there, which surprised me. He must have decided this was serious enough to limit the audience. He didn't look angry when I walked in. He looked tired. That was almost worse. Glad you came, my father said. He was doing his version of neutral, which mostly meant he was looking at the centerpiece instead of at me. I wouldn't miss it, I said, setting my bag on the floor and sitting down. My mother brought in a dish and set it on a trivet without making eye contact. She went back for the bread. The performance of normalcy, the plates and the napkins and the serving spoon felt grotesque given what was sitting in my bag. I think we should eat first, my mother said. I think we should talk first, I said pleasantly. The food will keep. A pause. My father nodded slowly. My brother looked at me. I want you to know I don't think you're a bad person, he started. I think you got too close to the situation and maybe you. Did you contact Miss Aldridge's office? I asked. He blinked. What? Did you or your attorney contact Miss Aldridge's office since the reading? I'm looking into my options, he said. That's not an answer. Jenna. My father's voice carried a warning. I'm just asking what's already happened, I said, because if a formal challenge has been filed, everyone at this table needs to know that. My brother leaned back. Nothing's been filed yet. Yet, I repeated. Okay. Then I want to tell you what will happen if it is. I kept my voice even, the same voice I use with clients when I'm explaining consequences they haven't fully considered. Contesting a will in Ohio requires you to prove undue influence or lack of testamentary capacity. Graham's physician documented her competency 2 weeks before signing. Ms. Aldridge has been practicing for 15 years with no disciplinary history. The will was signed on a day I was in Cincinnati in a client meeting. I have billing records showing 6 hours of logged work that day. I was not present. I did not arrange the signing. I scheduled one doctor's appointment because Graham asked me to, and she drove herself there and was examined independently. The room was quiet. So, if you file, I continued, you will be paying an attorney to argue against a documented competency assessment, a clean notarization, and a verified alibi, while the court will also consider whether the challenger has a financial motive. I looked at him steadily. And you do? His jaw tightened. That's a pretty bold thing to say. It's a public record thing to say. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope. I set it on the table and slid it toward my father. Open it, Dad. My father looked at the envelope. He looked at my brother. Something shifted in his face, a slight tightening around the eyes, the look of a man who is beginning to suspect he has been given one version of a story. He opened it. I watched his eyes move across the first page. The UCC filing from Meridian Advance Group. $18,000, 3 months before Graham died. What is this? He said. A lien, I said, filed against his business assets by a cash advance lender. Annualized rates typically run between 40 and 150% on these. They're called merchant cash advances. The banks had already said no. My father turned to my brother. Is this true? It's not relevant, my brother said, his voice rising slightly. It's deeply relevant, I said, because it establishes why the inheritance amount matters so much. It's not about fairness. It's about the fact that Graham's money was already being counted as a payment plan. You don't know that, he snapped. I know you visited her once in the 4 weeks before she died, I said. Once. I pulled out my phone and turned it to face the table, the camera app open, scrolled to a timestamp log I had exported from Graham's cloud storage. Her porch camera retained 90 days. You came on September 14th. You stayed 3 hours. I was there 11 times in the same window. Some of those visits were 30 minutes, dropping off her blood pressure medication, picking up her dry cleaning. But 11 times. I set the phone down. If I was orchestrating something, I did it very slowly. The silence that followed had a different texture than the one before. The first silence was the family closing ranks. This one was the family looking at each other. My mother had stopped pretending to arrange the breadbasket. She was looking at my brother with an expression I had not seen on her face in a long time. Not anger, something more uncomfortable than that. Recognition. You said she told you it would be equal, my father said slowly, still looking at the documents. You said she promised you. My brother shifted in his seat. She did, she told me. When? I asked. When did she say that? A pause. I don't remember exactly. Was it before or after the notebook? I asked. He looked at me sharply. What notebook? Graham kept a spiral notebook in her kitchen drawer. She tracked every loan she'd made in the family. She showed it to me about 6 months before she died. Your name appears 3 times. $22,000 total. No repayments logged. Total. No repayments logged. I paused. That notebook was given to Ms. Mrack. Aldridge is part of the estate documentation. It is on file. The color left his face slowly, the way water drains from a bathtub. My father set down the papers. She logged the loans? She was meticulous, I said softly. You both knew that. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a word. She put her hand over her mouth. You're just doing what you always do, my brother said, his voice cracking at the edges now. You come in with your documents and your records and you make everyone feel stupid. I came in with the truth, I said. You came in with the story. You were always her favorite, he said. And something in the way he said it, the rawness of it, the old wound bleeding through the anger, made me feel something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, sadness. Because he wasn't entirely wrong, and he wasn't entirely wrong for reasons that had nothing to do with favoritism. Graham loved him. She just couldn't reach him. He had never let her. She loved you, I said quietly. She told me that every single time I visited, she worried about you. She wanted you to be okay. I paused. She also kept the notebook, because she was honest, and she wanted the record to be accurate. He looked at the table. My father closed the manila envelope. He looked older than he had at the funeral, which I hadn't thought was possible. I owe you an apology, he said to me. His voice was rough, like the words were scraping something on the way out. You do, I said. I should have asked you directly instead of. Instead of assuming, I said. Yes. My mother was crying quietly in the way she cried when she didn't want to be seen doing it. She had her face half turned toward the window. I thought about what I wanted to say. I thought about 28 years of being the one who held things together while being the one who didn't need protecting. I thought about the 9:30 phone call and the pause before, I don't know what I believe. I need you to understand something, I said. I've been reliable my entire life. I paid my own tuition. I built my own career. I did not ask this family for money or co-signers or second chances. And the first time someone leveled a serious accusation at me, a legal accusation, the kind that could end my career, you paused. You actually paused before you decided whether to believe me. I looked at both of them. That is what I'm taking home with me tonight. Not the inheritance. Not the will. That pause. No one said anything. My brother finally looked up. His face looked stripped of something. I didn't actually file anything, he said. I was just. He stopped. Started again. I was scared. I know, I said. The lender has been calling, he said, every day. I know that too. I don't know how to fix it. That, I said, is not my problem to solve. But it also was not Graham's, and it is not an argument for rewriting what she chose to leave behind. He nodded, very slightly. The first honest movement he'd made since I walked in the door. I picked up my bag. I stood. Jenna, my mother said, turning from the window. Stay, please, eat with us, we'll talk. I looked at the pot roast on the table, still steaming. The serious conversation meal. The meal that had come out for every family reckoning I could remember, as if the right cut of beef could soften whatever needed to be said. I have an early morning, I said. It wasn't true, but I needed to leave on my own terms, not theirs. My father stood. For a moment, I thought he was going to hug me, and I wasn't ready for that, so I stepped toward the door. He stopped. I'll call you this week, he said. Okay, I said. I walked out to my car. The night air was cold in the specific way Ohio October gets cold. Not dramatic, just honest. A reminder that warmth doesn't last forever and you have to dress for what's real. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. My brother filed nothing. Miss Aldridge confirmed it 2 days later when I called. Whatever he had been planning, the dinner had ended it. Whether it was the documents or the camera timestamps or just the exhaustion of being caught in a version of themselves he couldn't maintain, I didn't know and I wasn't going to ask. The estate settled 6 weeks later according to Graham's wishes, without amendment. My brother took his portion and, as far as I can tell, used most of it to settle the Meridian debt. His girlfriend posted something on social media about a fresh start, which I assume means they moved. I don't follow him closely enough to know for sure. My parents called more than usual in the months after. My father sent a card in November, an actual card, handwritten, that said he was proud of me and sorry he had not said it enough. I kept the card. I didn't frame it or make a thing of it. I just put it in the drawer where I keep things that are true and important and not yet fully processed. My mother asked me once, about 3 months out, why I hadn't just let the legal process handle it, why I had called the family together instead of letting lawyers sort it out. I thought about it. Because I wanted you to see it, I said. Not a judge. You. I wanted you to be in the room when the story changed. She was quiet for a moment. That must have been hard to organize. It was also what Graham would have done, I said. She believed in being accurate. She believed in putting the notebook on the table. My mom laughed a little, the surprised kind. She really did. Yeah, I said. She really did. I was promoted to senior associate at my firm 4 months after the estate closed. The raise was significant. The work is hard. I still go back to Dayton sometimes, not to the house that's been sold now, but to the street, the neighborhood, the bakery on 5th that Graham used to like on Saturday mornings. I sit with my coffee and I do the crossword. I do it in pen. About 2 weeks after the promotion, I got a text from my brother. It said, I know I was wrong. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say it. I read it 3 times. I thought about the notebook, about the $22,000 and the 0 repayments, about the way he'd said you were always her favorite with that stripped, raw hurt underneath the anger. I typed back, I heard you, and then I put my phone face down on the table and finished my coffee. The ledger was accurate, the record was honest. Graham had made sure of that, and so had I. And sometimes that has to be enough. What I keep coming back to, months after all of it, is Graham's notebook. That spiral-bound thing she kept in the kitchen drawer, with her careful handwriting tracking every dollar she had ever lent and every dollar that had never come back. She didn't keep it out of bitterness. She kept it because she believed the record mattered. She believed that how you handle money and how you handle people says something true about who you are, and that truth deserves to be written down somewhere. I think about that a lot when I think about my brother. He isn't a villain in the way stories usually need villains to be. He's someone who got scared and made a choice that fear made feel reasonable. He was drowning in debt he had hidden from everyone, counting on an inheritance that turned out to be smaller than he planned for. And when the math didn't work, he looked around for someone to blame. I happened to be the most convenient option. I was reliable, which meant I was taken for granted, which meant I could apparently be accused of a serious crime without my own parents pausing for longer than 3 seconds before they started wondering if it was true. That's the part I've had to sit with the longest, not my brother's accusation. I understood at some level why he made it. But my parents' hesitation, the pause on the phone when my mother said, I don't know what I believe. 28 years of being the daughter who showed up, and it evaporated in one phone call from someone who was frightened and desperate and not above lying about it. What I know now, that I maybe only half knew before, is that being trustworthy is not the same as being trusted. You can build an entire life on doing the right thing, paying your own way, documenting everything, showing up 11 times when someone else shows up once, and none of that automatically translates into people believing you when it counts. Trust isn't given to the person with the best record. It's given to whoever tells the most emotionally convenient story at the right moment. My brother told a story where I was calculating and cold, and had used my professional skills to take advantage of an elderly woman. It fit a narrative they already half believed about me, that I was the competent one, which in our family had always carried a faint edge of suspicion, as if being capable meant being capable of anything. What undid him wasn't my anger. I didn't cry or plead or perform my innocence. I opened a folder. I showed the documents. I let the timestamps speak in the dry, factual language of things that actually happened. That's what I mean when I say that doing right by people. Being genuinely honest, even when it's inconvenient. Keeping your own record straight is not just a moral choice. It's a practical one. The truth has to live somewhere. Graham kept hers in a notebook. I kept mine in billing records and cloud storage in a public court database. When the moment came, the record was there. I don't think I'm a hero in the story. I'm just someone who paid attention and who had enough self-respect not to fold when it would have been easier to. That's what I'd want anyone to take from this. Not that the right people always win, because they don't. Not automatically. but that there is something worth building in yourself that has nothing to do with what other people decide to believe about you. The clarity to know what actually happened, the discipline to document it, the steadiness to stay quiet and let the evidence do the talking when someone tries to rewrite your story for you. Graham did it in pen. So do I.